Hello to anybody watching. Welcome to the Environment and Facilities Committee meeting on the 11th of March. And thank you everyone for coming. We start with apologies, which we were just hearing from Councillor Slade. Do we have from Councillor Monk? Or?
We've had apologies from Councillor Slade and Councillor Brooke.
Brooke, okay. Thank you. And then if anybody had any declarations of interest or dispensations, then our practice is to speak up at that point in the agenda and leave the room or whatever might be necessary. So next point on the agenda is to review the minutes from the meeting on the 11th of February. I have been having a read, so if we go through page by page, page 1, did anybody else see any issues? I did not. No. Page 2, fine. Yes. Okay. Page 3. Hang on. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong document. I had it from a moment. Page 2. I'm sorry. At the very bottom, the word "always more" needs an E of the minutes. Did you catch that? Page 2, at the very bottom line of the page. It's just MOR, missing an E. And then the next page, the third line down, it says that is one space we own, I think is what is meant there. And then in the next paragraph under Councillor Creek, yes, sorry, in the first line.
Would you possibly be able to send me these?
Yeah, okay, so they're mostly small edits. So the small edits, I'm happy to send you. They're just spelling and grammar. I think someone was in a rush. I'm glad they were trying to catch the content. That's great. What I would say, which is of a more material point, which is at the bottom of page 3, it said we could work together with the comms officer and a comment around the hiring of agency town rangers. And my recollection of that discussion was that we actually did agree that that would be moving forward. So I'm not sure if we need to strengthen that or if that's...
Well,
yes?
I think it goes to GNR tomorrow for ratification.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's captured in a formal sense. Great, thank you. Okay, and then on that page 4, Councillor Creek mentioned working with public health on a daily basis and would pick up with them and speak to the Deputy Director. My understanding you did that. We saw some emails and they were not seeing a concern. Okay, yeah. So I'll loop back to that in a second. So page 5, I did not see any. Did anybody else see any issues? Page 6 was the railway station EF132/24-1 on the expression of interest for the railway station. The only other point I'd add there was that I was stressing to Joe Pawecki, to our Deputy Clerk, the gentleman had asked for what date, and Joe had responded saying within 2 weeks that he would try to get that EOI out. And I think it is important that we note that, please, if we could, because I realise that it's a challenge for him, but at least that was what he was trying to do. And that's sort of important that we're respecting people who bothered to turn up and ask about those sorts of things. So if we could just get a line saying that the Deputy Clerk indicated he would try to do that. Oh, it's out. Okay, then it's moot. You're right. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, page 7, any comments? No. Page 8, any comments? No. Oh, yes, yes.
EF136/24B.
Yes.
I didn't think that we did unanimously give delegated authority to the corporate service in regard to the Killicourt tenancy applications. We still wanted our input, as I know we're not a working party.
I think it was...
I think we just need to be careful because we have, that was a project. We have sort of run with it for the last 4 years. And that was our input as councillors, not interviewing them, because it's not an interview, it's a formal chat so we get a feel for them, because there have been lots of applications that have come in, and even before Jacob was there, and then there was Molly and somebody before that, they were saying yes to things that we would never have even considered, and that's my fear.
I think that was only in relation to the pet period. I don't think it's ongoing. It's purely in relation to when we're in the pet period, and we can't really involve you. Just the safest option is to remove you from that discussion.
I just think it needs to be really clear, though, that
for
somebody else reading that would think, you know.
Okay.
I'm very precious, as you know,
just
about
that tweak there that it's for
I'll have to go back and listen to the recording to see what the actual resolution was. If that was actually worded, then I can make a tweak. If it wasn't, I obviously can't change it now.
Okay.
Because it was at the time. But I can certainly go back and listen. I'll make a note to go back and listen.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
That was the spirit of it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. See what you think. Thanks. Okay. Page 9, any comments? No. Page 10, any comments? No. Yes, no. Hi, Joe. Thank you. Page 11, any comments? And that was those minutes. Thank you. And then matters arising was the point about the public health. Councillor Creek down there.
Yeah, so I emailed the Deputy Director of Public Health, Dr. Ruth Goldstein, who came back to us all, I think, via email, and essentially, I won't read you a whole email, said that despite her best efforts there, and she worked really hard, but it sounds of it, she couldn't find any evidence of any issues with distemper or the reduction of vaccinations in dogs with regards to the dog fouling.
Chair, we haven't voted the minutes yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. So I'd like to propose that we pass the ENF minutes for the 11th of February. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Councillor Creek, all in favour? Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hannan.
So, yes, sorry, that was the matter arising. So,
yes.
I know that Dr. Ruth is going to keep us apprised if anything changes or she becomes aware of anything different. But I suppose really tricky one to get some good data on from, different sources, I suppose, with vets and bits and pieces. So, but of course we are on the agenda tomorrow night at GNR is the Rangers, as you quite rightly discussed, talking about dog fouling more generally. So,
excellent. Okay, so that's in progress as well as an urgent one. Thank you. And Joe, do you mind me just asking, we could talk more later, but just briefly, do you know if your team's had a chance to get to Polwheal at all in recent weeks?
Yeah, we've upped it by 1, so we go up there 3 times a week.
Oh, fantastic.
We haven't noticed any increase of litter, antisocial behaviour or dog fouling on site. So. Right.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Just one other matter arising from the minutes, if I may. I'm looking for it, but essentially I said to the committee that I would go and have a conversation with the owner of Salted Cafe, which is located just beside our toilets at the station, with regards to the pop-ups there. I have to say I had that conversation yesterday with him, and completely understandably he feels extremely nervous about a pop-up food outlet on that site, particularly during the day when him and about another 12 other local businesses will be trading from food. Obviously pop-up businesses have a lot less overheads than bricks and mortar businesses, and so will be able to trade at and offer produce at a lower cost than those that have to pay business rates and that have a kind of firm full-time commitment to our town and our food industry. So with that in mind, I think we should have a think about that moving forward as we go through the EOIs. And I note that the EOI has gone out, thanks Joe. Be interesting to see what comes back, I guess, and then go from there.
Yes. No. No, I'd suspected that might be the case, and it said maybe something different like ice creams and selling hats and things that the Salted wouldn't be selling. But let's see how you go. Thank you. Okay, so it's time for the open sector session for the electors of Newquay, if you have any questions. So please feel free to come and have a chat with us and make your case, I guess, but technically it's supposed to be phrased as a question, and great to see you. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm
For the
here...
audience, we have Anna from the Crantock Street Community Garden.
Hello, everybody. So, know most of you here. I'm from Crantock Street Community Garden.
I'm not sure the mic's... There's a button on it.
I am? Good.
Thanks. Great.
So we applied for some funding from Town Council, and I was really pleased to hear that I sent somebody in my place because I was up in London, and that they from the presentation and the application made that you were pretty much in support, but there was some question around the fact that we haven't actually 100% secured money from SIL funding. So I've been invited to come tonight and talk a bit about that. So I guess it would be helpful to know what you'd like to hear from me. I've got some updates on the garden as well, so if you just want me to talk to you and at you about the updates and a bit around what we're looking for the funding for, or if you have any specific questions for me to start with, happy to answer those.
One of the questions that had arisen, and we've got a written page here in the pack, and I think it's public, about the status of your grants. And one of the questions in the past month or so was, if you didn't get the grant, my recollection, and I haven't gone back and looked at the video record, actually I don't think it was video recorded, your presentation, my recollection was that your colleague had said, if you didn't get the big grant, you would use the smaller amount of money for something else instead. And one of our councillors sort of raised a valid concern that, well, if you spend X thousands here and then 2 years later you rip it all up and do this other bigger thing, is that money well spent, essentially? So we were sort of curious. I think we have two issues at stake. That was one of them.
Yeah.
And the second is a question, I think, just for the councillors here for us to look at, which is what we do about our policy generally. But just if you were able to answer the first question on if it was only the small amount, were there plans or not? Or...
Yeah, I've got the letter from Cornwall Council, which hopefully you've all seen, which effectively says they're giving us till the 30th of June to address the slightly weaker area of the application, which effectively is, I'll just address those points, it's all necessarily funding to be confirmed, and I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute, provide final project costs, and where funding's been secured from, and in view of the costs and funding to be finalised, provide updated key delivery milestones. So what we're asking for funding from Newquay Town Council at the moment is ideally the money to fund Kim Parish from land stakes with distinction. So we've got just over £2,000 in our account at the moment, which we raised from our raffles and things. Her fee for the next part of the proper full plan development is 2,220 plus VAT, so that's 2,664. So we can meet the majority of that, and any surplus. If I have said that I will put the rest in, and we can get it back, and the kind of committee have agreed to that in terms of our constitutional committee, so we can get that back from our next big lunch event when we do a raffle, and we'll make it clear that that's what that's for. So what we're asking for you for the money for effectively is ideally a little bit towards that planning, because that's the main bit. And so without demonstrating to Cornwall Council that we've got a really detailed plan and key milestones and or those bits were in there, they won't give us the money, or they might not. But we didn't want to commit to paying Kim to do the plans until we knew that we could get that. So it's kind of a bit swings and roundabouts at the moment. So that's where that is. If we didn't get the money, as I say, only a very small proportion, a few £100, would be used for the plans at this stage, and we will be getting more money from the raffle, so we will be topping our account back up. So effectively, we top the account back up, your money would still be there, and so that could be used for other projects in the garden. If we don't get this now, in all honesty, we haven't thought much further than that in the moment, because it needs this massive investment. We can't do anything more with the garden without a massive investment in the groundwork, which is the big bit. It's levelling out the ground. We've had Altco come in and they've kindly offered us a reduced rate, which we've already had confirmation of. We've got planting plans, which I'm happy to present to you today because they're very exciting. And we're doing a big crowdfunder. So met with the founder of Crowdfunder last week. He actually asked me if I'd like to meet up with him. I know them really well. We've crowdfunded before for our mural. We doubled our target. So if we go out for a crowdfunder, I'm working with Crowdfunder now to work out what that's going to look like. And there are things like the planting plan, which I've got the quotation through for today, which is just under 4,000 as it was in our original proposal. But what our idea was is things like the crowdfunder is people like to have something that they can put their name to, either a kind of prize that they receive, which is what we did previously, or something that they can say, we funded that. So there are so many plants, amazing plants there, which people can put their name to. So they kind of almost prizes, but they're prizes that they don't get. They just see them in the garden. We're going to be looking at corporate sponsorship. We're going to be looking at all kinds of donations for legacies, all sorts of things like that. So, but it is founded on this one big 100,000 application. What we're also saying, and you'll probably note if you read the letter in detail, is that we went in at 150,000 because we were told to go big. By many people, including Cornwall Council, including Kim, who's done this sort of thing many times before. And we've been clear throughout that we can scale back. There are loads of things in the garden that we can scale back on, like because Cornwall Council removed the tree that was there, there is no coverage at all. There's no shade. So one of the ideas, one of the plans is that we put a pole up with a big sails that will cover part of the garden, probably the grass area. So that can easily be scaled back, taken out. We can get corporate sponsorship or corporate donation for that. So there are lots of elements where there's wiggle room, but we've gone in at the stage where it is 150,000. That's what we'd like to aim towards, but we can definitely scale back. And within Kim's plan, she'll be doing that. She'll be putting in options for that. So I've given her the go ahead on doing the plans because, as I say, I can make up that small amount for now, but we can't do anything further. We can't give Cornwall Council the assurance they need without the plans.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Any of them that you've gone to, any of the other ones like Groundwork, Boardmasters, National Guard, have any of them come back and said yes yet?
No, most of them are mid-March or end of March deadline. Sadly, really upset about this, but the lottery have said no, and that was 20,000. They've been inundated, and they said a little bit like this: if we don't have a detailed plan. I'm going to find out if we can go back to them, because they do have, it's every kind of 3 months or so we can go back to them again if we've got more detailed plan. If we're very focused in some other areas, I put in a focus application into how I could, but they're quite limited in the amount of information you can put in their application. But others are end of the month. I've chased Boardmasters as well, because that was kind of an open fund as well. So we don't know how much that would be, and the others are towards the end of March.
Councillor Hannan had a question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, first, before I make a comment, can I just ask the Deputy Clerk, can we overturn this? Are we okay? Because obviously, when we passed the resolution, it was clearly on the basis that it wouldn't be released until the other projects were. Are we able to change this before we have a long debate about it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can make the decision to exempt that part of the grant policy, so you don't adhere to that specific criteria for this grant. I would just say it is a case-by-case basis, so if you're going to do that, you just limit it to this grant application.
Thank you. I thought I'd better check first, because there's no point going on and supporting it and doing all that if we can't do it. I mean, I know the project quite well. I'm fully supportive of it. I know Kim Parish quite well. She designed my garden, but I'm not declaring an interest because I've already paid for it. I think it needs to progress. You know, whether we allow the whole amount so it progresses, or whether we allow part of it just to get it over the line and get your money back. That might be a part-way option where we say, okay, let's lift the restriction on 1,000 of it so that they can get the plans drawn up and you don't have to contribute. I wouldn't be overly adverse to supporting all of it. I'm just a little bit worried that if they don't get any other money, as long as there's a proviso that 2.5 is spent, but most of it's going to go to Kim, sadly, if it doesn't proceed. But I think you've got to sort of have a go if you're going to find out, aren't you? So I have no issue supporting release. Yeah.
Yeah, so much like Councillor Hannan, very supportive of the project. It's one that, you know, is really keen to see get off the ground. Happy to, you know, along the lines that you said, Councillor Hannan. I think let's go with the 2.5. Sadly, as you say, most of it's going to be sort of ring fenced in the planning, but you need the planning to get the rest of the money. So, and then the other thing I was going to say, in terms of National Lottery grant application, and the others seem less cumbersome, probably. by all means, let's put you in touch with Kieran, our grants officer, if he can offer you any time.
We've had a meeting.
Oh, you've had a meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Was he useful?
I think I've probably gone for most of the things that he'd suggested.
Brilliant.
We talked about lots of other things, and he said he'd be more than happy to help with future applications. I don't know if you know my background, as I recruit for charities, that's my job, but I was also a fundraiser at one point. So whilst I'm not an expert in application writing, I'm making a bit of a go of it.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, he said he would
Oh,
help.
good.
So
Good
that's
to
brilliant.
hear that
Thank
it's
you for
been
that.
useful as well. That's brilliant. Super. Yeah. So yeah, I think we should just go on there. It's on the agenda this evening.
Can I also just say one other thing? If you just wanted to release part of the money, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, we'd have nothing if we had, you just suggested, Councillor Hannon, £1,000. I think, we don't need all that money sitting in the account just to sit there. It's more so just to pay the slight difference between, it's not huge amounts, as I say, it's 2,664 now. We've got a little, I should have brought the figure, it's a little over 2,000. So that, if we could just pay Kim just to make sure we've got those plans, if you wanted to release a bit more, just so we've got a little bit of money in the account. So for example, for our big lunch, if you wanted to release the money to the garden, and we could report back on what that was spent on, and then in the future, if we said, right, what part of this new garden, once we've got that money from Cornwall Council, which part would you like to fund, and we can attribute that to Newquay Town Council. And then also, I'd like to say as well, kind of in support of it, I know that kind of quite a bit of support in the room, is that if we can't demonstrate we're getting a bit more funding in, we're not going to get the SIL funding.
To keep it simple, I'm pretty confident that it'll get spent on the garden one way or the other. I'd propose the 2.5 and just close it now.
Well, as the chair, in terms of the agenda points, can we can move to making a decision on that now? Yes. Yeah. Great. Okay. So Anna, we need to close the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm in support, and the only interest I declare is that I live up the road and around the corner and have been to one or two of the events, but there's no financial or any other benefit. Yeah, I think many of us can say that.
I'm happy
thank you, Anna.
Happy to propose, Chair, now that we're back in session.
I'm also in support of the full amount, because my understanding is this is a very local, small community group, and we are able to, our understanding, and I guess our impression is that that money will quite readily just be spent on the garden and the events right there at that community space. So, Councillor North?
I was just going to say, you seconding it?
And I will second what Councillor Hannon has proposed. Thank you. So would we like to vote? Okay, all in favour? Okay, quickly. Well done. Thank you, everybody. Okay, great.
Can I just say, if
yes.
Louise or whoever writes to Anna, it's a shame that she's gone, because I was going to say, why doesn't she tap up the 3 Cornwall councillors, see if they've got any money left in their community chests?
Great. Great. Thanks. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. And my understanding is they're supposed to report back to us sometime in the next sort of six or 8 months or so on what they spent the money on. So we will see one way or the other, and that it's spent down the road for Newquay residents. So next item on the agenda is Newquay and Bloom report, which we usually have Councillor Thompson put. Councillor Hannon, thank you.
I can do it quickly, Chair. They had their AGM. Where are we now? Last week. So that's their annual meeting where they elect all their committee, and it was a reasonable turnout. It's normally committee members that go, if I'm honest. Leslie, my wife Babs, has stepped down as chair, and she was duly elected as president. So she now becomes president of South West in Bloom. That allows her to have more of a consultative, but she's still a member of the committee, so she'll still go to meetings, she'll still be part of the group, and she'll still be out with them every Sunday and Wednesday. Leslie Friel was elected as chair. She's come up from being secretary, and she's now the chair of Newquay and Bloom. And Kim Parish stood down as president to allow Babs to be president, because it's normally the chair would normally go to president, but you still need your president to stand down. So she gracefully stand down. And I'd like it minuted, she's put a lot of effort into Newquay and Bloom as president. She started most of the projects that Newquay have. I think she was a bit sad actually to step down, but she gracefully did it. And they go onward and upward. They're looking forward to they'll go out to the spring seminar and we'll be entered into South West in Bloom. And hopefully we'll get our 16th consecutive gold.
Fantastic. And the
Who took the secretary role?
I think it's Jenny took secretary. Same treasurer. Sharon stayed on as treasurer, and Bob, not Bob, same vice chair. I'm just trying to remember his name. He's a real godsend to the group because he is an ex-parks manager, lots and lots. That group has years and years of experience, from a gardening horticultural background. So
amazing.
I'm sure they will go on to greater things with Leslie's leadership.
Yeah. Well, the flowers have looked beautiful around town. It's spring, so they're at one of their best moments this week or two. It's been lovely. So thank you to Newquay in Bloom team, and if anybody's watching and wants to get involved in gardening and learning from the experts around town, Newquay in Bloom. Yeah, there's a Facebook page. Thank you, Councillor Hannon. Great. Environment Services Manager report is next. Is it a verbal one today?
Yes, Chair. Nothing to report on. It all came in start of this week, end of last week. So Town Ranger, I'm meeting with the company that did the Town Ranger's bid on Monday the 17th, so I should be able to report via email on that. Conscious that we won't meet now till July, but updates will be forthwith. And the second phase of the allotment project at Trent Creek has started, so we're beginning to level and remove all of the detritus and plastic and metal, so hoping to be done in a week's time, and update emails as well on that one.
And what's the timing towards it eventually being finished and available as allotments? It's a few months, is that?
It depends on what the outcome of our findings are, and we've got issues with parking and size of plots and so on, so it may be July for our first meeting, but it should all be there, information should be there.
July sounds like a fair timing. Great, right, and then that would be alerted to people on the allotments list right now.
Yes, so we've put the feelers out so far to see if there's people still interested, if they're local. One of the questions we're going to ask is if they can get to site without using a car, just to help limit that stress on the parking and the surrounding neighbourhoods. We do actually have 2 plots that we can open before summer, which should hopefully ease a bit.
One happier, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Creek.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Chair. Why do we need to wait to July to get the allotments open? Presumably, I say all we need to do, all you need to do is obviously segregate them up into zones and then offer them out to people on the list. What decision is it that we have to make on that?
I would say it's just a cost. There's potentially up to 20 plots, and that could cost a fair amount. Just put the infrastructure in, the paths, sheds, water butts, that kind of stuff we need for an allotment. So it might be a budget request.
Do people not provide their own sheds and water butts and bits and pieces?
They do, but they generally leave it in a state of disrepair, which is a cost to the council, which we're finding ourselves in at the moment. So the idea would be to put a communal structure on site with raised beds and IBCs.
I've got to be honest, and I'm sat really close to him, so I've got to be careful what I say. We have a complete disagreement on this, and I just want the committee to know. In my mind, having been around lots and lots of allotments with Babs judging allotments, the whole part to me of an allotment is that sort of personal feel of an allotment. And the majority of allotment users like to go to an allotment and they like to have their own little place they can sit and do whatever they want to do and keep their tools and I am totally anti-communal sheds, and I wish we'd review this, because I think, yes, you have problems when they leave, if they leave their shed. Yes, you can put standards on what the shed should be. You can put conditions in that they have to maintain it. To me, an allotment is something personal. A communal shed like with the one we've got at the phase 1, to me, you need somewhere to shelter, you need somewhere personal to go if it's raining while you're up there. You might spend all day there, you want to go and eat your sandwiches in something. To me, an allotment without your own ability to have your own personal space and shed is not an allotment. And I wish we'd revisit it before this man here goes and spends lots of money on communal sheds. But that's my personal view.
Thank you, Councillor Hannon. I mean, I would just pick up on one thing you said, which is about putting standards and clauses in contracts. I mean, I don't know how old the original template is and if that's something you can play with, Joe. I think certainly one way or the other, I think we should be doing that, learning from any mistakes of the past and just trying to, continuously improve the space for all users, any space we own. So I'd certainly recommend that one. But sorry, Councillor North?
So obviously I've said this before because I agree with Councillor Hannon. People who have an allotment, that is their oasis. And when they go up there, they want their own little space. You only have to look at the one at Quintrell Downs or Nanslen, what anybody wants to call it. They've all, they might look a bit higgledy-piggledy, but we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for people to use that piece of ground, grow some vegetables or fruit or whatever, but to have their own little space there.
I mean, I'd just point out that our environment officer at times has had pressure from many of us to keep places tidy, and I don't mean just me, other people. So he's trying to balance between different things we say at certain times.
I don't think it's about tidiness because they haven't been up and running. No, but if you
very next door, there were comments from certain councillors that it was messy and things, and it's really trying to balance around all of the sort of ways we deliver that, essentially.
And also, I don't believe that the taxpayers should be paying for a communal shed for people to use an allotment. The allotments don't cost them a lot of money. Yes. People might be on a list and can't get an allotment, and yet we're paying money out for a shed or whatever it is for communal. And then what happens if somebody can't get into it or vandalizes it, whereas if there's their own little space, it's far better. And we're not looking for pristine, we're not looking to enter it into Nuki and Bloom, we're just allowing it for people to be able to have their own space.
Councillor Creek, did you have your hand up?
I think Joe wants to come in. I'll happily wait for Joe.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Creek. So I'd just like to point out the taxpayers currently paying for us to remove all of this detritus and unwanted waste, which is costing potentially thousands. So whilst the shed may be X amount, it's not as much as we're currently paying out. But I don't disagree. Actually, I really don't. And that's what I will be coming back to committee with. If the options are there, that is, the SWOT analysis says, strengths to have one shed or multiple sheds, it's the committee's decision. So whatever I find in the space, it will be up to councillors to decide on that.
Is this not something we can just continue the conversation on now and decide?
Potentially, yeah, potentially.
Sorry, Councillor Creek.
Thank you. So I struggle, and I do agree with Councillor Hannon, to be honest. I struggle to understand why, and I suspect we probably can, and I'm answering the question for myself, but why we can't just set a strategic direction right now, give delegated authority to the Environment Service Officer and the Deputy Town Clerk to establish, is it 20 allotments we were talking about on that site? Yeah, 20 allotment sites on that site, get them out to the list with a set of rules and regulations around our expectations for the tidiness and the cleanliness and the type, and we don't want a ramshackle shed, but and those sorts of things. Can we do that? Because actually July feels like we've wasted another year, to be honest, because if you've got an allotment, you want to start be planting in the next month, don't you, really? I don't know a lot about gardening, but I know that much. So can we do that? Can we just do that and say, get that up and running by April?
We can, yeah, we can. We can change the tenancy agreements for new improved clauses, like use 75% of your plot up to the first year and so on and so forth. Yeah. Only have a shed so big, and limitations on what can be used.
Right.
So,
I'm happy to propose that delegated authority and setting that strategic direction and getting people on that site in April. Yeah. I'm happy.
Sorry. Yes, please.
To have individual sheds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just to say the amount of money it has cost the taxpayer that was years of neglect that we had to clear that site, to be honest. It's not just happened in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That was years and years and years. I visited that site nearly 3 years ago when we were looking to demolish everything.
And there will be revenue going forward from, and the other thing about starting in the next 2 months, the revenue starts earlier. I realise it's small, it's tiny, but, it means every year it's 2 months earlier as well. Joe, I would say, so thank you, Joe, if you can move forward in those ways. Sorry, the final vote, all in favour? Right, we have voted now, thank you. And Joe, I was just going to say, if you can always come back in 2 or 3 months when there's a new council here, and if you want to propose the shed and see what they say. But for now, it's getting moving and see how that goes. And yeah, you're sort of taking the easier approach. So thanks very much for getting that going into the team for all that. It must be some tricky work at times. And it's exciting to see that space is coming into usage and with the long list of people waiting for allotments as well. It'd be great to see more people get them. If it's up to 20, fantastic. So did you have other updates for us? No, Chelsea. Okay. So I was curious, the railway station in front of the town council's toilets, how are you and the team going on the plantage for there?
Yeah, so I've been working with our grants officers who's looking at the community capacity fund at the moment. We're just putting together a package.
You already had approved budget for some of the planters in front of the toilets there.
Yeah, the 3K won't kind of get us to what we want the site to look like. So it'll just be a little bit of a mess design-wise and looking-wise. So our grants officers were working together to put a package together to ask for the full amount
from
the community capacity fund.
Do you know how long that would take?
I had emails today and I met with them today.
I mean, I think it's a similar issue that
24th of March.
I think we'd all love to see it be as beautiful as it can be, but if that money's not going to come through until, who knows, June, July, and really May is when the tourists are here, we'd rather people could have a pleasant space in the meantime. Is there an interim solution you can do with the 3,000 that's already approved?
Possibly. We might be able to get a couple of planters with trees in the back.
I mean...
but the pack can go in by the 24th of March.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's great to hear that you found the grant.
I mean, I was aiming for hopefully Boardmasters get it, July, August. To be looking good.
Sorry, Councillor North, you know.
I wasn't going to say anything, but obviously I would like it done earlier. We've got Easter coming up, and to be honest, this is hung over us. We've had a lot of slack from different individuals on the council saying, toilets, ventilate. It is, and even
approved the budget. You did some great designs, Joe. I realise they can be better, and I love your ambition, and I love that you're finding grant money. That's fantastic. But I'd like to propose that we ask you to just spend that 3K, get whatever you can get in for 3K right now, and get that done by May. And then if you get more and you can fill it out later, fantastic. Thank you. So do we need to vote on that? Anybody? I'm proposing that. Sorry?
Do we need to vote on that? I think have we not already signed it off?
Yes.
We have already signed it off in the budget, and that's, okay. So thank you, and saw some great stuff happening on the Killicourt from your team, so good to see that. And finally would be the Atlantic Road car park. Just checking in, I think you were going to be doing some work on the tar sealing the entrance, just putting a bit more stones sort of down. Okay, just been done, has it? Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any concerns on that front? Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. Next on the agenda was the footpath maintenance contract. So we have a proposal here, and it's many pages long. And Joe, do you want to explain it? But I mean, my takeaway was there are two proposals. One includes Cornwall Council's land and one doesn't. Is that correct?
I can try and summarise if you like, Chair.
Thank you.
I think I'm probably, other than Louise, the only one here, and probably Councillor Hannan, that has any kind of intimate knowledge about the footpath contracts because of how long they've been running. So historically, the Town Council has undertook footpath maintenance around 60 footpaths around the parish. That's been going for as long as I've been here, for at least 10 or so years. Common Council have historically only funded roughly half of that due to the nature that they'll only fund public rights of way. They won't fund a lot of the things that we've essentially inherited over the several years. You get little cut-throughs which should have really been devolved to housing associations to manage, but they never, it just doesn't materialise, and then it just falls into the ether. So as a public service, really, the council has kind of picked up this maintenance. So that's why I've broken down your two options, just to give a bit of context. So option one, I asked all of the bidders to give quotes on both options. So option one is quotes based on just paths that we get funding for. Option two is the quotes for paths that we have basically absorbed over time. So to cut a long story short, there's been 3 bids. Myself and Joe reviewed all of the bidders, and our preferred bidder was TP Tree Services, based on historic working with them, and as well as from a cost perspective as well. But my linked in with that recommendation, in my opinion, is I feel that we should be continuing to do what we have done, insofar as doing all the paths. Even though we've inherited them, no one's going to pick up that slack. There's going to be no organisations that pick this up. This is not going to be pass it back to Common Council jobby. Then no one will pick them up. So to my mind, we've budgeted for it. The quote that we've got is within budget, and I think it would be a benefit to the community for us to keep doing those, keep maintaining those paths. So that's
how much was the budget line we had available? Do you know?
It is in the report. I think it's on the first page.
Can you see that? Okay, first page.
It is
overview. The 6,516. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Well, it looks like a really detailed analysis you've done here. So thanks very much for that. That looks like quite a bit of work. Does anybody else have any comments on this one, Councillor Crick?
I looked at this last week, and I've only just glanced at it again now, but I seem to recall when I looked at it last week that there was a wide variety of quotes in there, from the from the really cheap to the really, really expensive. I couldn't quite believe the contrast between the lowest and we've gone in the middle, right? So is that right? I thought the cheapest was...
We've gone for the lowest.
Oh, okay, sorry, we have gone for the lowest. Yes, apologies, I've misread that. But the highest was extortionately high. So, and again, this is just trimming, brush cutting, mowing, that sort of stuff, isn't it? Yeah, so there's no spraying of anything, presumably. I do think that we should, the next council should have a good look at this and decide on a long-term strategy for some of this. And you're quite right, you know, whether some of this should be devolved to housing associations or, you know, other bodies, if no one else is going to pick it up. Definitely worth looking at and exploring the options on it. You know, we can't just keep carrying on picking up lots and lots and lots of work without there being an implication on cost, obviously. But yeah, happy to support your recommendation there, Joe.
Councillor Haynes.
Yeah, happy to second both recommendations. Are we using TP already?
We have used them.
We've used them.
The previous contract.
Yes, so they have the previous contract and they did a good job as far as I'm aware. I agree, it's always good to look at alternatives for the ones that we're not being paid for, but certainly in this instance I think the paths are very important to local residents. The fact they're not a right of way is just unfortunate, but they're just as important. So I would second the proposal to take the Deputy Clerk's recommendations on the 2 contracts and use the recommended contractor.
Can I just ask, Deputy Clerk, do you have any indication why the highest one was so high? Is there a misunderstanding they had?
I tried to get some further clarity on that, whether there was any confusion over kilometres or metres. There wasn't, so I can't really give any further clarity on that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
The only thing I would say is that, I mean, Glendale is a massive company, and I've got to speak highly of them because they support South West in Bloom. They are one of the major sponsors of South West in Bloom. So I can only imagine that they're a major contractor.
And they don't want tiny.
Yeah, possibly, but yeah, I was amazed. 13,000 down to 2,000 odd was quite drastic.
Yeah, and maybe factoring in sort of project management or something like that, having written bids myself. Okay, so we've had a proposal to go with your recommendation, which happened to be the lowest bid, and they happen to be local versus others which weren't and maybe don't necessarily know the area as well. So that argument made sense as well. So I'm happy to second that recommendation. And all in favour? Thank you. Okay, thanks so much, Joe. Great. Good to see that happening in time for all the growth in summer. And next point on our agenda was 9B, other devolved open green spaces, parks. Do we have any comments, recommendations?
It's just a holding item, Chair. It's a catch-all for any other spaces that the committee may want to discuss.
Right, okay. The next item on the agenda was the Environment and Climate Change Working Party report, which the Working Party has not met because my Vice Chair is away and other members have been up to their ears, I think, and you've been, the team have been rather busy with team changes, so nothing to report there. And then the next point was Newquay Clean representative. Do we have a note or somebody speaking on behalf of that today?
I believe this was referred by full council.
Yes.
For this committee to appoint a representative from this council to attend Newquay Clean meetings. I think there's only one now before. Yeah, before
I've attended them years ago. The timing's a bit odd, isn't it?
If there's anyone in the room currently that's interested
I
in
can make a call
position.
tomorrow if it's tomorrow. It's usually, 21st.
I'm already on the
Okay, so Councillor Creek will carry that on then. Okay, so
Let's just formally appointing Councillor Creek as the
Are we going to formally appoint you?
Happy to propose.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favour. Right, that was done. Concrete Waves Working Party report. Councillor Hannan, thank you.
The only thing I've got is that they're just asking for updates on the lights. If we could have an update, I can feed it back to them because they're chasing myself and Holly and probably the mayor constantly when the lights coming on. It's very frustrating.
Right.
And it's stopping people using it and it's not getting light enough.
Yeah.
Enough yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, we're getting a company coming out in the next 2 weeks to look at the lights with cherry pickers and so on. It's just because of the access issues. We have to check all the lights on the circuit, and they're up high. It's looking like ingress of water potentially.
Okay.
The only thing I can say, 2 weeks. Can we not expedite it? There must be someone local, is there not, that can look at it quicker? It'll be daylight until about 9:30 in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Can we not put some temporary lighting down there? Is that a ridiculous thing to do?
Haven't we used it on the Killicourt temporary?
Those tall floodlights that are generators. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, you could do. I mean, you'd have to have someone turn them off and on, and make them tamper-proof, I suppose.
And
Steel-proof, yeah, graffiti-proof.
do we want to delegate, perhaps Councillor Hannan, Councillor Creek and Joe to sort of figure this out after this? Does that, because
Can I ask, Chair, who we got coming to do it in 2 weeks? Is it a normal contractor we use?
Yes, a CCTV contractor in OVO.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I do agree that, sorry, I mean, you know, the evening, we're in evenings already now of Newquay's lovely sunsets again. And I can understand people wanting to get in there skating in the evening. So, Councillor Creek, is this something, I'm just thinking there might be some logistics there, and my personal point would be to raise just, I don't think it would be an issue, but just in case, Joe, you're thinking there's any security issue over leaving lights there or something like that. Yes, sorry, you have something to say.
Yeah, I mean, now, just looking at my calendar, it's on the 17th, they're due out. So that is literally 6 days, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks for updating that.
Can I just ask, you know, all that, somebody was building a den there, Has any of that been picked up on CCTV? Because we pay a lot of money, don't we, for CCTV? Has anybody been identified from it?
Unfortunately, it's the camera's facing the wrong way, so it's behind the camera.
Can the camera be turned round to...
You'd have to speak to the CCTV manager to reset the position.
I just feel there has to be a way when that happens that we are reactive. I know you put it on Facebook or whatever this time, but we need to be able to be reactive as a council to say, you know, we're now monitoring it by CCTV, so the people who are doing it are aware. Maybe the camera doesn't turn round, but, you know, they may think it has, you know, and there must be people down there who see that happening. I mean, we've got Chockies. I mean, I've never heard so much about a chap called Chocky. I know he's not there, but he was the one that was managing that site. He was looking after it for us, etc., etc. But still, all these things happen. So I can't believe that when they start to see them building it, and they can't be doing it in the dark because we haven't had the lights, that somebody's not reporting that. We've got a working party, haven't we? That Councillor Monk has sat on that working party forever and a day.
The only thing I'd say in defence of the CCTV is, yes, it has a decent coverage of the park, but where they're building the den, it's behind the brush. They could easily do it without being seen. So that's the only thing I would say. It would be, I'm just saying it would be challenging, and there's ways they can get around it, and they know the park well. They know where they can get to without being seen.
But I'm just thinking other adults that are down there, you know, these sort of mature skaters, Chocky, who's meant to be, you know, best thing since sliced bread, looking after the site. That's all we ever hear from the working party, that, you know, Chockies do this, Chockies do that. But in truth, somebody must see it happening. That didn't just happen in 2 minutes, you know.
Is it our land that they're building these encampments on?
It's yes, it's half ours, half Cormac's.
Can we not just plant some more trees in it?
They're cutting the trees and shrub down, so this is where the issue lies.
Well, then it's definitely a town ranger issue, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
And this is
add that to the list.
And this is not a trespassing police issue.
I mean, I reported it to the inspector as well. He assured me he was aiming to step up patrols in that area as well.
I see.
I don't really want to go into too much depth in open session, but we've also had certain individuals at the park making allegations that they're going to do further damage to the park if certain things aren't done. So we're kind of up against certain quite antagonistic individuals as well.
So I suppose if people are making them as comments, we need to let the public know that we're almost being held over a barrel. That site has been provided for the people of Newquay and, you know, out and about. And we can't have a group of people almost holding, not us, you know, as the town council, us as councillors, but the town council to ransom by saying, if we don't get A, we're going to do B, because actually it costs a lot of money. We've just put the nursery slope on. So there must be lots of parents there with the younger kids watching all that going on. I know we've had problems right from day one, but it just seems that we don't, but there's a few who spoil it for everybody else, you know. And I know it's not an easy thing, but so the sooner we get a ranger, the better, than they can be up there.
Well, good luck working with the police. Sorry it's at that stage. And thank you all for the attention to that. And I guess do keep us posted on email if you needed a word in or whatever you thought we might be able to do. Okay, thank you. Facilities Service Manager report. We have a good report in here. Thank you. Okay, Joe's going to be making this one. Thank you.
Yeah, it is still myself covering the role. So just a couple of updates on some matters. So the maintenance operative and the team are looking at doing some just light touch TLC before we hit the season. So trying to save us a bit of money on using external contractors. So they're due to start in a couple of weeks. So kudos to them really for, and that they also they want to do it as well. They take a lot of pride in their job. As I mentioned before, the expression of interest, I'll use that term loosely because it's an investigatory exercise. It's not any procurement process at all. It's just a kind of have a look at what people think of the area. We've only had one response so far.
This is the air conditioning?
No, sorry, this is the railway station expression of interest pop-up thing exercise. Sorry, I'm at the very start of the report.
Heck. Oh, right at the very, very top. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies.
Just to say, we've only had one response. Oddly, it wasn't the gentleman that attended. Hasn't responded yet.
And did we email the invite to him, or?
Yes, it's been been as widely publicised as we can. So we're still waiting for that. Deadline is 31st of March, as I've been advised by our procurement advisors, is a reasonable time for him to do it. And I'll report back to committee on what the outcome of that is and whether we feel it's viable to continue into a more formal tender arrangement at this moment in time. It's too difficult to tell. A couple of updates on things that you actioned last month. The maintenance operative has saved us some money again. He's managed to get the 4th Street contactless units up and running himself with just his own expertise. So we didn't need to buy those new units. So that's now been repaired, and he's also made some general repairs to some of the other coin paying machines as well around the town. So yeah, he's done a good job there. Aquarod, they have completed the drainage repairs to the offices in the library. There was a delay after about a week. There was one of their office managers was on paternity leave, so there's a bit of miscommunication between us and them, but they are now finished. Work's ongoing. The door replacement has been commissioned from Outwise. We're going to go with Arrow Doors, the same company that we've used on the library. Also, not to the extent that we have in the library with All Singing and All Dancing automatic door, but it's the same company, which will link in with the Paxton intercom system we've got up there. The plastering works have been started. He's already done pretty much the 2nd floor. Just needs to decorate it. Then it'll be the 1st floor corridor, and then that's him done. And the contactless units are ready to go and ready to be ordered, but that's I've got a further recommendation further down on that. So the kind of main thrust of my report is 2 things other than the contactless units. So I flagged up the condition of the air conditioning units, excuse the pun, to our facilities manager back in August, and you know, for one reason or another, we didn't get to the point where we are now, where we've got quotes for your consideration. So I've tried to highlight in my report, because it's all well and good for me to say how bad certain things are, but I think it's helpful for you to see it for yourself.
Well, photos, thank you.
How bad some of these units are. So Jacob in the office has kindly sourced 3 quotes for you to look at. So 4 units are essentially fallen into disrepair in my mind. One of those images, you can see our maintenance operative has tried his best to kind of secure one of those units still to the wall, but to my mind, they are hazardous now, and they aren't too far from falling apart. So we're talking quite high quotes here, and I can't really say, and I'm not an air conditioning expert, so whether these are reasonable, I don't know if any members have experience purchasing air conditioning units to see if they're cost effective, but you've got 3 quotes that have been given to us. Cornwall Cooling provided the existing units, I believe, or if they didn't, they certainly serviced them. They've provided the highest quote, but you've got the longest warranty, and then you kind of scale back, so it gets less with BS Air, and then in the middle you've got Refrigeration Southwest. So because I don't have, I'm not confident to be able to present you guys with a recommendation, because I can't hand on heart say any of those quotes I would recommend. I can only go with the top line and suggest to give delegated authority to spend up to a limit. I don't really want to go to that limit, if I'm honest. And the one thing I did note is that with whatever replacement units you go with, to my mind, it needs corrosion protection in this maritime climate, which is what these units didn't have, which is why they haven't lasted as long as, and I wasn't involved with the procurement of those units. Why we didn't go with that, I don't know, but clearly we're in a situation now because we didn't do that. So all of those quotes have that included. And the only thing I did note from Cornwall Cooling in comparison to the others is they're the only ones that have suggested a higher wattage unit, whereas the others in the larger office, they've suggested a 7 kilowatt, whereas the other companies have suggested slightly downgraded versions. So if anything, I would be going back to Cornwall Cooling to say, well, what is your cost for a lower spec unit? Because if you've got two companies saying that you don't need it, to my mind, do we actually need something that high spec? I'm not convinced. So I'm kind of at the mercy of yourselves, really, because I don't know enough about aircon units. I've just got quotes and my kind of general summary of
well done,
where
thank
we
you.
are.
Yeah, really helpful. Councillor Hannon had his hand up.
It's only for guidance. It depends what we're going to decide, but Refrigeration Southwest are clients of mine.
Okay.
I suppose I'll just ask the question, they're a little bit like an air source heat pump, but in reverse. And you can get units that are for marine areas. So we need to be asking that, not getting them to protect them after they've put them up. They should come ready for the environment. I'm not an air source heat pump or a cooling expert, but I don't think we should be buying a unit and then protecting it. It should come ready for a marine environment.
The Cornwall Cooling one does. It's built and manufactured to withstand the climate that we're in. The other two are additions, so they would coat it with, I'm not an expert, but a specific coating that they would coat the external units, whereas the Cornwall Cooling, it's what they provide.
Yeah, not an expert in air conditioning units. I can tell you lots about air source heat pumps. I just have one installed, but unfortunately not air conditioning units. But a cursory exploration on the internet seems to suggest that they are between about £500 to £1,000 per unit, depending on the kilowattage of the unit. Installation, presumably, it's basically an electrician job, and I know that they're not particularly cheap. 4 of them. I mean, it doesn't sound horrendous. I'd be more inclined to lean towards a quote that gives a 7-year warranty, albeit for an extra 40% or whatever it is, 50%. You know, just because clearly we only had these ones installed 5 years ago and they're already knackered. Are they still working, or is it just the safety concerns in that they might fall on someone?
They're still operating, but it's the safety concerns that those external units. Yeah. The frustration I have, again, I will say I'm not an expert. The frustration I have is that none of these companies, and I'm assuming that it's just a nature of their business, they won't replace just the external unit, because the way they're configured, they link in with the internal units. So I have a frustration that these units
so these are getting replaced as well? Yeah. Oh, so I've misunderstood then, because I thought it was just the external units. These are going as well.
And decommissioning and removing what we've
got.
Wow.
So, okay. So that you start to see where the quote comes from then, don't you? That's frustrating. I mean, I did have a look at them when I was here the other day. Clearly, the 2 on that side of the building are pretty horrid. The ones on this side of the building, not so bad. Is there an option to just do those 2? I mean, is there anything wrong with the ones in here, or is it just for a completeness?
I mean, this is why I've suggested up to a budget, because to my mind, I would like to ideally, and I did ask for, I might not have included it in my report, but I did ask all the bidders to essentially break out their cost per unit, so we could cherry pick and prioritise if we needed to, because I appreciate it's a big chunk of change. It's a big chunk of the maintenance budget, albeit there's nothing immediately on the horizon apart from this that I've come across, other than what we've already addressed. So, yeah, that's the only thing I'm of the same view that having a longer warranty would be beneficial in the long term.
Yeah, I would propose we could delegate authority up to the highest quote. And I would go back to that highest quote and get a quote for a 5 kilowatt instead of a 7 and see how close that brings it. Exactly. And ever so disappointed that they can't just change the outside. We got air conditioning in our apartment away, and when they break, they just whisk along and change the outer bit. They never come into the apartment and change the inner bit unless it's, no, it's not. And it may be a safety thing, but I would just do one last check to make sure you can't just change the outer bit, because, you know, for the environment, throwing good stuff away for the sake of it. But yeah, delegated authority up to the 8 and let the deputy clerk and the officer get on with it.
Second that.
Just before we move to vote, I'm in support as well. I agree that I look at this and I think about the different kilowatt levels. And I guess my curiosity would be, if this is sufficient for this room, then why do we need higher? Because that's an energy wasting expense to the council. So I would push back on them really strongly on that and say, look, we're trying to save taxpayer money here and be energy efficient. And so everybody, you know, it sounds like whatever we've got here is, I mean, this certainly seems sufficient in my mind. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
There is a calculation. What they should do is they measure the area of the volume of the room, and then there's a calculation, because otherwise they'd just be. I guess my point is. I just wonder why they've gone 7 and the others gone 5 and 4, because they should be consistent.
Right.
Really.
Exactly. Okay. But at least in that discussion with them to say, this is what works for us already. It works very well. We've had 30 people in this room, and it's fine. So if that's sufficient, then they may be overestimating a bit what we need. To Councillor Hannah's point on the calculation, maybe this room, because it's up quite high, the cold air falls, that kind of thing. And again, just to really strongly push back on the our efforts to be environmentally friendly and less wasteful as a council. We strongly would like to know that they were doing their best to be environmentally friendly with us, and if at all possible, we'd rather just do the outside, just to really put that in writing and make that really clear to them. And they'd have to have a jolly good reason, you know, where they can explain why that's not possible if they still insist. I mean, I understand that technical thing, but sometimes it's like, well, that would mean the electrician needs to spend half a day more. Well, let's pay for the electrician to spend half a day more rather than throw this thing in the bin. You know? Yeah, great. Okay, so we've had a proposal. It's been seconded. All in favour, and thank you. Okay, thanks very much, Joe. That's a really good analysis again, really clear breakdown for us. Thanks. What else was?
Yeah, just item 2.
Toilet door replacement.
Yeah, so Councillors Creek and Hannon, you may or may not remember because it was a long time ago now, but we held a toilets working party meeting and we talked about a number of things. One of them was where we have a door that needs replacing, we will invest a bit more in having a steel door, which will be more, well, not maintenance free, but certainly withstand the elements and be last a lot longer than the current wooden doors, which don't tend to last very long, particularly in this climate. And the first phase that we agreed and did was Watergate Bay toilet accessible. That's been done. The second phase I'd like to look at is 2 doors at Esplanade, which were highlighted at the time. You've got 2 quotes. I've recommended APS, which is the company that did the Watergate Bay door install. I'm quite happy with that. We've got the budget to do it, and as you can see from the pictures, it's pretty dilapidated. That toilet can't actually be used at the moment because it's completely rotted through. So not only is it not brilliant from a service user perspective, but also because we can't get in there, we can't do any of our regular monthly flushing and Legionella checks as well. So it's just not ideal all round. So my second recommendation is we replace those 2 doors.
Happy to propose that.
On that, thank you. Take your recommendation. Thanks for that, Joe. It'd be great to see the Esplanade toilet there, that extra toilet up and running. What I would say on Esplanade toilets, it's great that we have them. As someone who, you know, they're down the road from where I live, many times with different people, I've been walking in that area at 5 p.m. in winter, and someone needs to use the loo and it's not open. So when we have the contactless payment, I'd encourage the future committee to consider keeping them open for a few more hours in winter. There are lots of people around walking at 6 p.m. this time of year, and yet we've got all our loos closed, even though they're sat there. And so something to consider in the long run, medium run. But great to hear the doors getting going and eventually the payment. Thank you.
Last one is more of just an oversight on my part. When you agreed the quote for the upgrades to the contactless units for Killicourt, it was in the quote which was presented, but I didn't appreciate that we didn't actually sign off the 50% deposit needed for them to actually begin the work. So they're all ready to go. They just need the 50% deposit. So that's my third recommendation, which is suspension of the financial regs to allow that to happen.
Thank you. Really great to see those going in because, again, people love using them around town, and if that's what it takes to keep them going, then great. Okay, fantastic. You then had a control of infection policy. Joe, do you want to?
I do. This has been, I mean, some of the dates on the policy, this has been in draft since 2015, drafted by previous facilities managers. So I'm just trying to wrap up a few loose ends, and I haven't really done anything to this, and you can see there's a few kind of bookmark errors in the draft. This is purely just to get something in motion and in the system. I appreciate there's at least 2 councillors who have more knowledge about this sector than I do. So it's, yeah, I will just say this is draft. I just want us to have some policy in place for our staff, because I'm conscious that we use this policy, but it's not it hasn't been formally adopted. So I'd like something just to be started, really.
I just have a quick comment and then Councillor Creek. 6.1 says what protective equipment should be available. Do you have any idea, Joe, whether we do actually have all that PPE available for that team at the moment?
They have needle stick-proof gloves. They have kits where they can dispose of the needles, and they also have pickers where they can kind of pick at the needles as well.
Great.
So they do have the PPE that they...
The only thing that jumps out on me there is the goggles. And, you know, I just want to make sure that if we were to approve a policy, then we're actually going to be consistent and make sure we do actually provide what we say.
They do have goggles as well, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so they do have what's expected there. Thank you. Councillor Creek.
Yeah, Councillor North and I were talking about this before. We won't surprise you. I had a couple of concerns about the policy. I'm glad to see it hasn't been adopted. I wasn't sure from all the various dates on the bits. I did speak to the clerk about it on passing last week. Couple of bits generally that concern me. I understand the context of this. This is a policy essentially to ensure the safety of our people, first and foremost, particularly the facilities team who can come into contact with all sorts of things. My concern is that once we adopt this policy, it becomes a policy for all staff, not just the facility staff. And so I'll just take an example. 4.3, cuts and abrasions or skin lesions, broken skin, eczema and psoriasis should be covered by waterproof dressing. Now that, from me, has some really problematic connotations from a HR perspective, as well as a healthcare perspective. And I wouldn't be happy to support a policy that had that wording in. I would run it past our HR manager for her input on what she feels is appropriate, but that seems to suggest that anyone in the office with eczema should have their eczema covered up, which clearly is problematic and potentially disastrous from a HR perspective. And I'm not blaming you for that, Joe. I know that this has been through many. I just have some problems, and also the wording, as Councillor North pointed out before, control of infection policy. Well, it's almost impossible to control an infection. Infection control policy would probably be a better word. But it is an important nuance. So yeah, I mean, I'd have a run past Harriet and ask her advice. I suspect she probably has, given her background, come across a similar policy before and can probably give this the right kind of wording that it needs.
Is it possible to apply this to the facilities team and then start a draft on a much shorter, more simple version for the rest of council? But can't you call it a policy for how facilities team work on? Well, don't we have that though? I mean, they have. They are supposed to, for example, use these gloves when they're cleaning the toilets and things like that. So where have we written that down?
So, not really connected to this, but all staff, as well as our facility staff, have a health and safety handbook as well, which talks about how they essentially manage the risks in the workplace, which they adhere to. So I think what this was trying to achieve is something presumably the other managers felt needed a bit more, maybe a bit more of a bespoke policy for that service. That's what I thought. In addition to what we already have. So, as I said, the team have sufficient policies and sufficient PPE that they can work to at the moment. It's not urgent. I'm just trying to tie up some loose ends.
I think it's a concern if we do not anywhere have it documented that people in that high risk type of work are not guided by the council as to how they are expected to risk manage themselves, because if something happened, they could say, well, nobody told me what to say.
Well, there are risk assessments in place.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they do have guidance, they do have training, they do have health and safety handbooks that they can refer to. I think with any health and safety handbook which looks across the whole council, there'll be certain things which are quite generic. So I just think the aim of this policy was to try and maybe just expand on their
it reads to me like a guidance for that team rather than, to Councillor Creek's point, the wider council. And I certainly wouldn't. I agree, it wouldn't make sense for the wider council. Councillor Hannan, sorry.
I think it's a more around wording, to be honest, on that particular 4.3 with the cuts and abrasions and covering up eczema and psoriasis. I think if you read it in context with 4.2 before and 4.4 after, it's not right, and I agree with Councillor Creek, it needs changing, but I think if you run it on from gloves must be used when you, but I think that's to protect you when they want it covered with a waterproof dressing so you don't get infected when you're dealing with blood and bodily. I think it's just the context it's written there doesn't mean that if you've come in and you're going to sit at a desk all day and you've got, unfortunate enough to have psoriasis, you have to have a big bandage around your arm. I think what they're trying to say there is if you're doing that kind of work, after 4.1, when you've got to wash your hands and you've got to wear gloves, and you then make sure that any cuts and lesions are covered with a waterproof dressing, and then you deal with it. You know, I think that's the context. Yeah. But I agree, if you read it in its out of context, then you've all got to be covered up if you've got psoriasis. And
yeah, I mean,
I don't think that's what it means.
It sounds like we all agree that 4.3 would need to say, in the context of conducting cleaning of public spaces for the council, cuts and abrasions should be covered. You know,
Sorry, it's just not just 4.7 is another really good example, and I'm conscious Councillor North's been waiting to speak, but 4.7 would mean that every single member of the town council should be wearing goggles and a face mask, because protecting your eyes, mouth and nose from blood splashes, you know, and clearly that's not appropriate for an office member.
Again, to me is why it's unfortunate that 3.0 says it applies to all staff, volunteers and members of town council, but the rest of it to me reads like it's for facilities team when they are conducting cleaning.
Perhaps just to speed it along, in May you're going to be reviewing all of your policies anyway, so can I suggest that perhaps...
I think my challenge with that is, having been through that process, there are so many policies that you won't review it properly. It won't get reviewed properly. Yeah. So sorry, I wouldn't wait till then. I think we should try to give some decency to council.
So for me, I would wait for the new council to come in. You know, it's all well and good having an infection control policy, but actually this doesn't really read very well at all, because you go then to the jewellery bit. So are you talking about the facilities team, you know, nose studs have to be covered up? Well, they don't do that now, do they? But they've got a handbook. And I just think we're going to adopt something that really is meaningless. So I think we need to either involve Harriet, who's our HR lead, she's there for the staff, and get a working party that can look at policy review, because that's what we do at work. But this, to me, is a real health infection control policy. It's one that we would have at work, and it would adhere to everybody. So although I don't work on a ward, we would have to sort of, be really clear. We would also put a picture in of the 5 moments of hand washing. You've just listed it. So to me, we're rushing something through that we've said been there since 2015, long before you came, before you got involved. So to me, I wouldn't vote for this because I think let's get it right. If we're going to do it, let's get it right, personally.
And Joe, I guess what I'm saying is what I meant by the policies review in May is that there's a big pile of sort of 10 policies, and whereas what Councillor North is saying, separate it out, and even if it gets passed in May, at least it actually got reviewed properly, and maybe, as I say, there's subsections for when cleaning toilets, here is the guidance, etc. Sorry, Councillor Cook.
I just wanted to, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Lawson. I think I just want to reiterate the point that any policy that we adopt as a council is for all the staff. It's not just for what you can't just jerry-rig a policy for one portion of our workforce. And actually, there are a huge number of aspects of this that would be relatable, for example, to the library team or the TIC team, people that deal with the general public on a face-to-face basis that might come up with blood, vomit, bodily fluids. I could totally see, and I'm sure someone probably has at some point been sick in the library, certainly a child. And so, this is relevant for all things. I would happily give delegated authority to the deputy town clerk and the HR manager to go away and to be honest with you, I'm sure Harriet could pull that together pretty easily and pretty quickly, to be honest, and then propose it at the first meeting of the new council, if that's okay. I wouldn't be happy to support this at the moment.
My request would just be that whatever is brought forward after Harriet and yourself or whoever gets involved in that is there is a chance for it to be actually reviewed and discussed, rather than rushed through with 10 other policies that nobody reads, because they're, I'm not saying nobody reads it, but it's a lot in a first meeting especially. Thank you. Okay. And sorry, I'm coming at it from working on workplace health safety, so we're all coming at it from these different angles. So thanks so much, Joe, for picking that up, and one way or the other, you're getting it done in the next few months, so that sounds brilliant. Okay, I'm just trying to get back to our agenda, and the next point on the agenda, Climate Action Group, so I think that's a repeat of the earlier, that's the Climate Action Group with Tristan. Do you have an update?
No, I think this is purely if needed. Sorry, I should have put if there was an update needed. This is the Climate Action Group that's currently being led by our grants
so not
officer
Tristan.
Thompson's
thank you,
and
Kieran.
the volunteer group. So unless there's I haven't been given an update to present to committee.
The last update I had was about a week or 10 days ago, that they were in the sort of final design discussion, having surveyed around the town, that sort of thing, and coming up with the actual sort of draft first proposal, and then in the next few months that would come to full council, I think. So that's my understanding of the status, Councillor.
Just very quickly to add to that, I think my understanding is they've got the draft, the actual draft, there's 2 options for the draft. They've gone out to all of the members on that particular body for agreement and ratification, and the application's going in by the end of this month, is my understanding.
Yeah, I thought there was a stage before the application comes in where they come to council.
No, because we haven't actually been awarded anything, so there's little, and then this is just stage 1. So this is...
Yeah, exactly. It is stage 1. Yes, I was aware of that. Yeah, great. Yeah, and if they were then invited to make a formal sort of finalist proposal, that's when they'd come to full council with his, let's, polish, so to speak. Agree. Okay. Correspondence. There was an email from Councillor Fitter on the land at Ryalton Heights. I did have a read, but are you able to explain a little bit more?
I'm not entirely sure what is needed or required from committee on this. My understanding is there's been conversations between Councillor Fitter and Common Council. I think Councillor Thompson has been involved at one point in regards to this area of land at Ryalton. There's clearly issues there that they're having locally with fly tipping and lack of management. To my mind, reading the email chain, it looks as though the dialogue between the two, Cornwall Council and Councillor Fitter, it looks like Cornwall Council are suggesting options for Councillor Fitter and residents to consider. So at this stage, I'm not entirely sure what is being asked of the Town Council.
Yes, yeah, that was what I was trying to figure out.
The only thing that might, on the back of this, is I see one of their options that they presented to John was options 3, which is enhanced management, where presumably they would look for a willing organisation, possibly the Town Council, to take on that area under a licence or a lease. But as far as I'm aware, that's not where we're at. But I think this is probably just a kind of an update from Councillor Fitter, and maybe even just a steer as to what this committee thinks. If they did want to consider option 3, would there be any appetite in this committee to take on that parcel of land under some sort of management agreement?
Thank you. Councillor Crick?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, having read through the lengthy email trail, big fan of John. John's great, isn't he? I love John. Doing a great job, work out there for his constituents. But I think it would be wrong of us at this, which I think is the last meeting of this council for environment facilities, to start making any decisions on what would be costly devolution of an asset. Definitely one for the new committee, if that's at all what is being suggested. But thanks to Councillor Fitter for keeping us in the loop. Maybe we could just write back and say it's noted. Please let us know how that develops. If he's hopefully the councillor in the next term, that's the word I'm looking for, and the next council can explore options around that, I guess. Wouldn't be right for us to do that here, I don't think.
Realising the point, the reason it came to us might be because it says consider liaising with residents, and on behalf of residents. Joe, does your team know the area? Have any comment, any insight?
Yeah, I've visited the site with Councillor Thompson. It is just an odd bit of land, just the rear of several properties, which is actually used by these properties. I would limit the maintenance of it to literally nothing. It's self-maintained, but it is used for fly tipping for vegetation, really. There's limited access on site, so you would have to do it by push mower, which would take more time. And like the letters state, there are swings, washing lines, the works used by residents. So it's a bit of a tricky site, actually. But yeah, I would personally stay away from it.
Yeah, well, I would say Oceanhausen run the actual site up there. Cornwall Council own it. The residents need to go through John to Cornwall Council to allow them to sort of deal with it, because otherwise we take on every bit of space that Cornwall Council don't want to deal with, and it's not, in the interest. And there are property owners up there who could form a group themselves, but I know there are a lot of them on the back, I call it the back lane there, are elderly.
Okay. If we could, perhaps if we could just, Louise, perhaps drop an email reply just saying, given the time of year, unfortunately, the council's unable at this time, given elections pending, to consider this sort of thing, and if they want to bring it forward in the next few months, then great. Thank you very much. Just one line, that's all. Thanks so much, and thank you to them for involving us, I guess. Okay. Thank you. So nothing too much there. Okay, any other business from anybody? Yes, Joe, thank you. No, go ahead.
Just to say a thank you to yourself and Councillor Slade for chairing and vice chairing over this last year.
Thank you. Thank you. Joe?
Congratulations to Babs Hannon becoming president. Just
yeah.
The notes.
Yeah, fantastic. Sorry, Joe had something.
It's not on the agenda. Last month we discussed the request from BID to fund bunting in town.
We did.
They've since then made some headway in terms of funding, so they have identified with the town, I believe Shirley, who supports the town team, a grant from the Town Delivery Fund, which would give them £2,000 towards bunting. So I think
Fantastic.
funding-wise doesn't seem to be an issue for them.
Great.
It's whether there's, whether, I appreciate it's not on the agenda, so I really
Sure.
can only get a steer from you, but whether you, now that the funding has been resolved,
Okay.
would support them using our Christmas lights catenary essentially to put the bunting on.
So that the places to hang it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Right. So we don't do Joe's team here doesn't do the work. They do the work. They just use our clip-on bits. I mean, I don't see any issue personally. Does anybody? No?
No issue with that. Happy to support
Support
that.
the town.
Essentially, I'm just rereading Shirley's email that she sent me a few weeks ago, to be honest. And it says, I think the bid would like their last 2k of in-kind monies to go against the bunting project, so it makes sense. The project would allow Newquay Town Council to allocate the same. Does that make sense to you?
I was only told by the RFO that the funding wasn't an issue anymore, so
Yeah,
maybe
essentially, that's what I'm being told. Basically, it's TDF project. What's TDF project? Remind me. Town Delivery Fund.
Delivery Fund.
So
yes.
the money from the Town Delivery Fund, can we allocate it to that bunting? I don't see an issue with that. Are you all happy with that?
So that was our fund, but it's not the same budget budget line we discussed last time, and it is for the
Ring-fence
town
money.
and things in the town. So
On
right,
behalf of
yeah,
the town team.
right, okay. So I'm happy to support that. Yeah. Do we need to vote, or are you all fine? You just wanted to steer. Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for a great update given. It's a second load of work there. Appreciate that. It was really clear proposals and really easy to review. Kept us pretty speedy this time. And thank you also to Joe and the team. The gardens and greenery and things are looking lovely. Just more and more. Keep it up. And the toilets are working. And thank you to the committee for a great committee and turning up, and lots of progress this year. And Councillor Hannan, I'd just say thank you to yourself and a few other councillors who helped on the solar panels. That they're working now, is that right? They're in. You have to. Next committee, if you could show the lowered power bill would be fantastic. I'm deadly serious. I mean, really to help people see that that's what's possible across the buildings throughout the town. And yeah, it takes a bit of juggling of upfront investment, but over the years that's going to pay off. So it'd be really good to see that sort of a result, make it real for people. Yeah, thanks to you and the team for getting that done. It's fantastic. Okay, and next meeting would be, I guess, the new council in June, is that, or May or June? July, right, okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and Louise for the good work keeping all our notes there. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay.